The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
All right, it's episode number 104, and it is only like 15 days or something till the man burns as of this recording. I am not checking because it's giving me anxiety to think about it. So I wrote all my intro notes for this episode while in San Sebastian, which is in the north of Spain. Like 3 weeks ago, but maybe even longer. But due to production setbacks, this episode is finally going up just now. Thank you, by the way, the listeners who sent in messages saying, "Hey, where's the new episode?" I swear to God, it means a lot when you do that. I'm like, "Hello, anybody out there?" Anyway, I'm getting really close to like updating our website banner with like Burner Podcast, better late than never. But Burning Man's almost here. Yay! You're probably listening to this on your drive out, I'm guessing, or flight out, on your journey out. Our very good friend Ramiro Martinez, Burner Podcast's chief playa scientist, that's the title he has retained for life, has built a giant solid steel suspension bridge, which is insane. We loaded it onto the truck just a couple of nights ago. Look up Traversing the Dust on Facebook for updates. That's the name of the project. Or everybody just calls it the Dusty Bridge, but Traversing the Dust is the official name. I unfortunately didn't get to attend too many builds during this Burning Man art build season. And as you probably know, if you're a regular listener, my favorite way to burn is to be like really involved with like a big-ish project. There's nothing as satisfying as walking out into open playa and seeing and climbing atop a piece of art that you've had a hand in manifesting into physical reality. But this year, I just haven't been able to find a way to pull it off with my photo shoot gigs and my travel schedule. So, but it's okay. It's okay. Every year is wildly different experience. Every year has new lessons and new things to see. I'll be on playa for Build Week to help with a couple of things, including the bridge, which is going to probably be the majority of it. But maybe this year I'll get to sparkle pony it a little bit more after gates open, since I have no obligations after Build Week is over. Like, totally clear. Maybe this is the year I finally get to spend some time in the Orgy Dome. Was that a good transition? Did you like that? I have a feeling that there is a buttload of new listeners on today's episode because, let's be honest, sex sells. Fun Burner Podcast fact on that topic: the episode where I interviewed Camp Cheesy Porn has like the highest number of plays out of any of our shows on the platform of YouTube specifically. And I'm guessing that's probably because a chunk of perverts out there were just Googling porn and maybe got sucked into listening to the rest of the interview, and that's how they got the number. Anyway, that said, let us finally get into the Orgy Dome episode, folks. Important facts I learned: the camp is not called Orgy Dome, partly because it's not a dome, but also because the camp is actually named And Then There Is Only Love. And the service that they provide is the Orgy Dome. So today, you'll get to meet three wonderful leads of And Then There's Only Love, Shade, Laszlo, and Lefty. As you might imagine, there will be no shortage of innuendos and sex talk on today's show. But really, a lot of the episode is about safe navigation and consent culture. To the point where I almost named the episode some sort of twist on consent is sexy, but then the marketer in me came out and was like, "Nah, bruh, Orgy Dome's gonna be in the name." You'll get to hear the details very shortly, but the long and short of what I got out of the conversation is that the Orgy Dome is more like a consent think tank, like a very active consent think tank, but it's like a progressive laboratory, if you will, There's got to be like a fluids joke in there. And I feel like a strong argument could be made that the gift that they bring is technically not the orgy tent itself. A lot of work goes into the physical structure, don't get me wrong. But as a leader and community builder, I really appreciated the emotional and psychological gift they're bringing, or they're giving, of their own energy in order to create this safe space and cultivate this conversation. And you'll hear me tell them that during the interview. The gift that this camp is bringing to the playa and to the default world as a result is a safe space for exploration of this topic. A topic that is a part of your life, dear listener, even if you don't fancy yourself the orgy attending type. This was definitely one of those episodes that showed me some amazing new angles of what I thought I already knew a lot about. And I'm very excited to share it with you. It's definitely one that we've been waiting to do for a long time. It's been, on the list right from the beginning when this show launched. Like, we're going to have to do an Orgy Dome episode. So this is another big marker in our history. So very excited to share that with you. And after this very powerful yet still tons of fun conversation, yes, we'll be laughing and giggling and goofing around a lot. Don't worry, it's not all serious. The super fun conversation. We have a huge treat for you with the DJ set that you'll be hearing. We'll be listening to a very sexy, deep set from German producer DJ Seth Schwartz. This set was recorded at the Playa Alchemist opening party of last year's Burning Man. Playa Alchemist was that really, really, really big-ass pyramid as compared to all the smaller pyramids, I guess. It's a high-energy set that got me absolutely pumped for my first night on Esplanade. We've been jamming out to it here at the podcast offices. We have offices, I guess? I don't know. And yes, that's him. You'll be hearing playing strings over his own tracks. It's a really, really an amazing set. So anyway, enough teasing you, enough foreplay. I think we're all just aching and ready to get into today's show. Today's episode is entitled Meet Me at the Orgy Dome. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was the fly with the balls and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no name.
French, how about that? Okay.
Mic check, 1, 2.
Perfect, yeah. So if I was to talk like this, would you be able to hear me?
Yeah, excellent.
That's perfect.
You guys are
Good.
doing excellently.
Okay, great.
Yeah, just every once in a while I'll check it to make sure somebody didn't accidentally turn off their mic.
Or
But for
just
the
not
most
turn
part-
it on to begin
yeah,
with.
Yeah. No, and for the most part, as long as you're like right around here, you're fine. Sometimes people get excited we start doing this. I just have to like remind them, like, get it closer to your mouth.
I will hold it for you.
Yeah.
So I can do this
Yeah.
with my hand.
You want to make sure you can get it real close to your mouth so you can aim right at it.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Okay. So we were just talking about Teardown on the way up to the elevator, and we were discussing how the orgy doesn't stop even during Teardown.
Yeah, there's been many times where people are continuing to fuck as we are tearing down the dome itself. We're taking down the walls. We're taking down the ceiling. They're still on the mattress.
Yeah.
We just work around them, and people seem rather happy, but eventually.
There was one year where a couple was like, "No, we traveled across from the other side of the world to come and be in the dome. You can't tell me it's already closed." And it's like, well, it was right there. And they're like, "Where that trampoline is?" And they're like, "Yeah." So they went and like, "Well, just have sex under the trampoline and say we were in the orgy dome." And so I wake up and I look out and I see like 6 camp members like looking in a certain direction, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And they kind of point, And there's this like young hot couple by this under the thing, just going
Underneath
like
the trampoline.
like wide open in space. I'm like, they thought this was the Orgy Dome. I'm like, cool. So yes, Teardown can be fun too.
Yeah.
Why underneath the trampoline? I would just do it on the trampoline.
Privacy
hard to get
maybe?
traction up there.
That's true.
They were very happy to have all our camp not all of our camp, but just a couple of them who had tents that they were just like, mind if we sit there and watch you? And they're like, oh, please. And so they enjoyed their Orgy Dome experience that wasn't in the dome itself. But
Teardown is still Teardown. Teardown is a lot of
It's a lot of friggin' work and
Yeah.
getting all that shit back on the back of the truck and getting it
Yeah.
in the right order and not breaking stuff while we're tearing it down.
Well,
After
and-
we've been there for 2 weeks and we're all wiped
And
out.
maybe we're the three people saying, stop fucking and help us tear down this fucking camp.
when you're sitting there raking up the playa, then you're like, picking up tiny little fibers. You're just like, oh yeah, this was a fun party.
Gosh, before you were asking me about kind of like the general way that I approach like the show and how we get into the stories. Honestly, the only times that I have concerns is when I sit down with people and I feel like I have to try to get them to talk because they're kind of shy.
Oh, you don't have to worry about
Obviously
that here.
today, that's not going to be my problem.
Yeah.
It looks like.
You're
And
going
then
to need one of those little shut up signs.
no. I'll let you keep talking. We have no problem with that.
As your lawyer, I advise you to.
It's helpful to have a lawyer in the room at all times.
Sometimes.
So what I want to do is kind of go through real quick and have each of you introduce yourselves so that the listeners can associate a name with a voice, maybe like a sentence background, and then, I don't know, your favorite position. Go.
My name's Laszlo. I'm the current president and chairman of the board of Consensuality, Inc., which is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are also known as And Then There's Only Love, and our gift to Burning Man is the Orgy Dome, and my favorite position is superior.
That's good.
So my name is Shade. I have been part of the Orgy Dome and Then There's Only Love for 10 years, and we ran it just kind of by ourselves before we turned it into a nonprofit for, I'd say, a good 7 years. And tried to help to grow the camp to what it is today, and just absolutely have loved every single part of the journey. My favorite position, I was going to say, is just enjoying being actually on bottom as someone else is doing a whole shit ton of work to make me happy. So.
And the we she's referring to, I'm part of that we. I'm lefty, and we're partners of 30 years, and we joined the camp in 2009, and by 2011 we were thrown the keys to the camp, and with the help of dozens of other amazing humans, we were proud to build the camp up. And who we are is professionally, we actually play politics. We work in political stuff and
Interesting.
and run and do events and things, and that's how we ended up organizing this camp.
I recorded an interview the other day at Burning Man headquarters, and they have like the Thunderdome themed conference room, and I super regret not asking if they had an Orgy Dome themed conference room.
No, they don't.
I think the working in politics thing is just there's so much symbology there.
It's a completely different kind of intercourse.
So the name of the camp is officially And Then There's Only Love.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. The reason so this is why I'm personally really excited about today's show. There's like a list of like 5 or 6 things I feel like people who don't really know Burning Man, like, or they're like new to Burning Man, like they just want to get like snapshot of the culture. They kind of like see these like 5 or 6 things, right? It's just a bunch of techno. They mix up like Dr. Bronner's, stuff with like the
Dr. Bronner's and Dr. Pepper are the same thing.
The other
Human carcass
the human
wash?
carcass wash. Yes,
Yeah.
everybody mixes up those two, and then like the Orgy Dome thing is usually like one of the 3 or 4 things people bring up, and then the church trap art piece. I feel like
Yeah, that was epic.
Yeah, I've gotten pretty much all of these. Orgy Dome is, I think, the final nail in the coffin, like the final list of like all the things people think about when they think of Burning Man, and I'm super excited about really exposing all of what it is.
Well, we have, because the name is "And Then There's Only Love," and our gift to the citizens of Black Rock City is the Orgy Dome. It's people, we're not necessarily listed as a camp Orgy Dome, and so people are looking for us, and we've become sometimes a myth. People have not been able to find us easily. We had one person like run up to us and say, "I thought you were like Daft Punk at the trash fence, like you're real." And we were like, "Yeah, we've been here every year." It's just 3. And and also that we're not actually shaped like a dome. We really should be called interconnected consensual carports. But it sounds better.
Yeah. Definitely. Orgy Dome is much better branding. Let's brand it better, and then let's make it hard for people to find.
Right.
That's our motto.
Our idea is if you want to find it, we want you to find it, but you have to actually put in the effort.
Yeah. I would say in general.
Yeah.
God, I don't even know if there's a sentence we can get through in today's podcast without it being some sort of a double entendre.
Probably not.
We took quite a bit of pride in that for several years in a row that the Rangers would tell us the number one asked question was, do you know the location of the Orgy Dome?
That's great.
I can vouch for that.
I'm glad people are going to the Rangers with the most important, the most urgent situations.
And the greeters.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So has the camp always been named And Then There's Only Love, and then the gift later became that?
Yes.
So, a quick origin story, if I can tell it.
No. We're going to do a long origin story. Go all the way to the beginning.
Our camp founder was an adult film actress named Jennifer Steele. And she burned in 2002. And was there with her husband and some friends. And it was Wednesday or Thursday. And the playa is dirty and dusty. And your tent is full of dirty clothes. And she's looking around and going, this just doesn't feel sexy. And so her and her husband were like, hey, we brought this other tent that we were just sitting here. And they said, let's just set up this other tent. It's clean. Put a couple little blankets in there and go in there. And they went in there and fucked. Yeah. And then they had such a good time. They came they told their friends like, hey, we went in there and used the tent and just fucked. And their friends were like, can we use it? And so this happened in 2002. So what Jen told us is she had a dream she was also a fire spinner. She had a dream and woke up and said the answer is, and then there's only love. And that she would bring to the playa a space that the only thing you did in the space was fuck. And it was this, so she got herself a little kind of like 18 by 18 little dome-ish structured tent.
Which we still use.
Which we still use. Actually, there's an old one and the old one. Okay. So it got replaced. And that, so the next year she registered with her and a few friends, and they brought this tent out called it the Orgy Dome. As a place for people to fuck.
And her another friend of hers, Dr. Dave, was instrumental in making sure they had the finances and things to get the structure and come up with the ideas of, well, it's going to get hot if you have people fucking in there. Maybe we should put some type of air conditioning system in there, and then figuring out how can they keep out the dust and all those little things. So that small structure, they sealed it from the elements, had some ideas of what they wanted to do, but really it was just that small structure and a sign out front that said, remove your shoes, couples and moresomes only, don't take pictures, and ask before you touch anyone. And that
was where it started.
That's where it started. And it was just so people had a nice place to go.
It literally
wasn't their dirty tent.
It had 2 mattresses on the floor and a blow-up orange plastic couch and a sex swing hanging from the center of the top of the dome, and that's all that was in it.
Yeah. No, it's, I make it like a really important point. Like, I firmly believe this, like not having your workroom be the same as like your bedroom, where it's like this, you want your Zen space, right? And then like it's really important to have these like different physical places that you can go into so you can fully be intentional about the experience that you're having. And I think that's a super important thing to clarify. That's kind of like where it started. It was with that intention first and foremost, rather than then I guess the orgy just kind of came with it.
We provide the space. People provide the orgy. We hear a lot of times, you never know what the vibe is going to be when you enter the dome space, because it's really who is there at that time. So we've had some people go, we went to the Orgy Dome and there just wasn't an orgy. Well, actually, there were 30 couples fucking around you. That is an orgy. An orgy.
Wait, somebody was disagreeing that 30 people.
Here,
They expect like everybody laying on top of
everybody
everybody
fucking
else.
each
They're
other.
looking for this
Okay.
big.
I think it's going to be like a
pile.
a pile
Right.
of bodies, and there's no consent and there's no anything else. But
Is
there
that considered a gangbang?
well, as we grew, as the camp grew, we found out some people would walk out and go, wow, it was just a bunch of couples fucking, and no one asked me if I could, wanted to join me and my partner, and there was no orgy. This is no fun. And other people were like, I'm afraid to go in because I think people are going to just jump on top of me, and like I'm going to have to fuck everyone who I don't want to. And so we kind of, part of the evolution of the camp was creating a space so everyone was comfortable, and a space where, not only we talked about consent, but where approaching others was acceptable, in a space where it wasn't. So you could go in there with your partner and just fuck in a room full of sexy strangers,
Right.
or you could join an orgy.
What Lefty and Shade really did above and beyond sort of put a really good group of people together was they sort of changed the ethos of the Orgy Dome from just an open space that was sort of unmonitored to really a place where we teach consent culture.
Right.
And so what it really is now, what it's become, is a large space where people can go in and practice and sort of dip their toe in being sexually social. They're not concerned that somebody's going to come up and grab them without asking first. If they want to go play with other people, we have two areas, and there's one's called Just Us, and the other's called Open to More. So if you go in with a partner and you just want to play with your partner and sort of pick up on the sexy vibe of the room, you can do that without being worried about it. And if you want to go play in a different space where there's a possibility of interacting with other people, that's there too. But no one, just because you're in Open to More doesn't mean come up and grab a handful.
Right.
It's an opportunity for someone else to ask.
Right.
And so they really, I like to use the word perfected because that's a really good, that's the way I think about what they did with the Orgy Dome is they took it from sort of a ragtag group of people in a fuck space to this really beautiful gift that we give people. Because my favorite part of this is when people come to the Orgy Dome the very first time, they've never done anything like this before. They're with their partner. They're nervous. They've never even seen another couple naked before. And they come up and they're all scared. And we give them the speech and we explain how everything's going to work. And we give them their condoms and their lube and their towels. And they go inside and they play and they come back out. And they've got this big smile on their face. And they're like, that was epic. And we'll be back tomorrow. That's what really makes it for us. So
I think it's an excellent clarification that you're giving, is that people assume that if the environment exists, that you're immediately jumping into multiple different conversations, and you're not necessarily expected to question your monogamous stance by going in and having this particular experience.
Correct.
You're
Absolutely.
still, whatever your relationship parameters are, those are going to continue to be respected. In fact, they should. You should probably start
part
somewhere.
of our orientation speech involves you should have your boundaries pre-decided before you go in there, because we don't want couples renegotiating their personal relationship boundaries under that kind of pressure. We want you to sort of think about that first.
Right.
And what we suggest is if you're inside and you're having a good time and you want to change your boundaries, finish what you're doing, go outside, talk about it outside where you're not under the constant pressure of, hey, I think that girl over there is really cute. Well, that might hurt my wife's feelings. Let's talk about it, when that risk is removed.
Yeah.
Even so, when we're giving a consent speech, because I'm looking at different couples and different groups, a lot of times I'll even say, if you've been with your partner for a long time, we're talking about consent right now. I go, practice enthusiastic consent with your partner, even ones that you've had for a long time, because you're in a brand new environment that you're going to be hypersensitive. You're going to want to ask, may I do this? Can I kiss you now? Can I touch your breasts? Normally, if you're in the bedroom with each other and you've been together for 7 years, you wouldn't even think about asking. You do your thing, but you're in a completely different environment. This is a wonderful time to practice enthusiastic consent with a partner that you've had for years. And maybe you might even find out that there's some new things that you might want to do.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about enthusiastic consent, and that is a core piece of what it is. When we first found the camp, and it was a fuck space, but we did have a camp member, one of the founders from Boston, who was very early in this idea of enthusiastic consent and bringing consent culture and the way kind of from the kink community into this open poly, sexually social spaces. And I will tell you, we caught on pretty quickly of how amazing it was when people from every corner of the world get a 20-minute speech about how to do sexual communication and enthusiastic consent and active consent and what that means. And then people who have never heard it taking it back to South Africa, taking it back to Israel, taking it back to all over the world. And it was like 5 years ago, somebody brought a map of the world and 500 pins. And by Monday night, the 500 pins were all in there. They were all gone. But we had where people came from, and people were from every single corner of the world. And the fact that kind of our San Francisco, our Boston ideas of kind of the leading edge of what consent culture was being spread everywhere. Just as people were like, hey, let's go fuck in that sexy space. But the result of it was something that was actually really...
Yeah, they go in thinking they're going to get one thing and they leave with something completely different and better.
Yeah. You just described Burning Man, by the way.
That's exactly
so
right. I guess in that regard, we are kind of like the perfect analogy for
Absolutely.
that.
Well, and we have children. We have right now our daughter is turning 20, and we have a son who's 13. And people say, "Well, your space. How do you feel about it?" I go, I feel good that my daughter, if she was in Burning Man, she wanted to connect with someone, that she would be safe in our dome. My son would feel safe in our dome when he is of age. It is one of these things that I take great pride in, trying to create a space that is safe. When you're connecting with someone brand new, we're talking about couples who've been together for a while, but it's Burning Man. People hook up and they connect with people for the first time. And do you want to take them back to your RV where you have your buddies hanging out? And, we
have a better idea.
A dome with a bunch of sexy strangers is a better idea. Or again, your dirty tent. Or here you're connecting with someone for the first time. You want to make sure you're safe. And when someone just gets a 20-minute consent speech and you're in a giant room with 150 other people fucking who have heard the same speech, bad things just shouldn't be happening. And I love the fact that we provide a space that allows you to expand what you can see and feel and do sexually, but at the same time provides a safe space for you to do that within your own boundaries that you set. And we encourage people to understand their no's, to encourage no's, and celebrate no's just as much as you celebrate a yes. Yeah. Because when you understand your boundaries, then you can understand what you want to do and what you want to gain out of the experience.
So we talked a little bit about the camp, what the camp was, which was an 18 by 18 tent. I mean, we're now 4,000 square feet of, 2 different named environments and probably 5 or 6 different rooms. We have a garden called Aphrodite's Garden, where once you wait, we have a line oftentimes, even though we have space for 150 or so inside. So while you're waiting, we call it a meet and flirt space, where we have a place where we give our consent speeches. And so now it takes 8 volunteers working all day. We're open 6 days. We were open for 24 hours forever. But now with how many people we need, we have close to 10,000 people come through the dome each year at Burning Man.
This is unique visitors. That's not repeats.
Yeah.
Every time we give a consent speech, we give a red band, and so if you come through again, you can show the red band. You don't have to get the consent speech, but. So we know how many of those red bands we give out, and we give out close to 10,000 every year. On Friday alone, we gave out 3,000 one year.
Yeah.
Wow. So in building in what Laszlo and a dozen other wonderful core people of the camp have done, and what Shade and I were honored to be the kind of the facilitators of we've created now a group of 300 people that do the work to provide this space. And each year on Playa, we have 120 or 130 that come out of the 300 who are our camp members. And one of the things I'm the most proud about is that community that we've built, of people who are there because they're passionate about giving the gift, who are passionate about the mission of enthusiastic consent and providing the safe space. And I will tell you, spending 10 days around that 130 people is
pretty damn fun.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's really great. A lot of camps have trouble getting their people to do the work. It's a constant battle of how are we going to get people to man the shifts. And for us, we don't have that problem. We really don't. With very few exceptions, we're turning people away. We're obviously, because of what we do, we're very careful about who we let join the camp to begin with. People have to be brought in by an existing camp member. They go through an interview process. The camp member that brings them in is responsible for them for the first year. So we want to make sure that people are acting professionally, for lack of a better term, and that's a weird word to use at Burning Man. But
in their tutus?
We want them to be acting correctly and making sure that everybody's comfortable. But it's a real honor to do this, and I think we all take great pride in it.
And it's actually fun. I mean, when you're a greeter, and any stage of, because there's different areas of how you can help in the greeting process, it's like it is an experience in itself. So it is fun to do. But even then, we only require 2 shifts, because our philosophy is, you go to Burning Man to burn. You want to have a good time. I want people to have a good time and provide this amazing gift at the same time. So it does take a community. People do more than 2 shifts because we need it.
And because they like it.
And they like it. And sometimes we need more than 8 people. We've had to have 12 just to kind of keep up with the amount of people that are trying to go through the camp. But the other thing in like creating this space of amazing people is sometimes we'll get questions like, well, what do I get from my camp dues? And we're like, you get nothing. Yeah. Other than the fact that you're helping bring this gift to the playa. We can't guarantee you anything. Yeah, we have a shower, we have a kitchen, we try to have great amenities for our camps. We might have a porta potty, but a 60-mile-an-hour wind could come and knock it all down. We can't guarantee you anything, but we can guarantee you that we're all going to work together, and we're going to try to bring this gift to the playa and have a great freaking time. And that's all we can say. And so anyone who joins us, they're not joining us because they think they're going to get something special or going to be able to plug in their RV or something like that. They are joining us because they want to help spread consent culture and give this gift to the citizens of Black Rock City. And that's it.
Yeah. There's a larger sense of purpose, but it's also fun. And that's always going to be the thing that's going to attract a lot of good energy into the camp. And you guys are also spending a lot of time on enculturation. Which is really massive, like positively reinforcing the right culture rather than picking up the pitchforks and joining the mob on the stuff.
That's my job.
And we were like, got back up. Yeah,
I'm the guy with the hammer.
Yeah, and I'm all, as everybody just love everyone. Yeah. And so
camp counselor.
Yeah, I'm camp counselor. It's a long week, but. When you get a group of people together who care about something, we joke that people don't even leave our camp. We just all hang around and chat with each other. But one of the things we love is brand new burners, is the virgin burner. I think that's where the experience comes from. One of the reasons why we wanted to start helping, well, one, we saw the potential of the Orgy Dome and just how amazing it could be. But we're not artists. I mean, we can help manage something and put together something, but how could we give back to Burning Man? At some point, if we were just going, we would be taking up space unless we were helping give back. And we found that we thought, helping bring this gift and expanding this gift would be the best way that we could give back. And so to us, when we see a first-time burner and they have those experiences of awe that they go, oh, look at that, that's amazing. Oh, look at that. That's every year. First-time burners get those experiences of awe.
Well,
after you've been there for a while, you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. You lose that thing of awe. It's like childlike experiences of awe. And I love that as a camp, we accept new burners and we want them to experience that. And we want to spread that culture of Burning Man to everyone.
I like to smack them over the face with it a little bit. I have a little golf cart, and when we have newbies in camp, what I'll generally do is the first night they're there, so they haven't seen the city lit up yet, I'll blindfold them and put them on the back of the golf cart, and we'll drive them out to Deep Playa. And then we'll all watch them as they take the blindfold off, because you forget what it's like when you had that first. I remember my first holy shit moment, in 2000.
What was it?
Actually, I was walking out. We got there on Monday night at about 3 a.m. And so I didn't go out that night. I just crashed, and we got up and we had a motorhome. And so Tuesday night I was walking out, and there was a little shack at the end of the Esplanade, right at the end of the street we were walking down. And I got to there, and it's like, like a cartoon. My eyeballs bulge out, and some guy ran over and slammed my shoulder with a big stamp, and it just said, "Holy fucking shit." And their camp was the Bureau of Holy Fucking Shit. And so what I remember that like boing moment of like, oh my God. And it still happens. Every year I drive my golf cart out, I turn around, I look back at the city, and the hair on the back of my neck stands up. And it's like, none of this shit should be here.
Yeah.
But taking newbies, especially newbies from camp, out, and we'll have like a few of our old timers with us on the golf cart, and then they look at it, and we get that joy from them that we are sort of get to relive our first moments out there, and it's like, it's great.
What you're describing is like a lot of the way people who really love children and parents describe like the joy of having children is that experience where you get to see the
thanks
awe.
for a play.
Well,
I'm not really into kids personally, but that's what they keep telling me.
Well, actually, we get a ton of people from kids camp, the adults, the parents. It's like, the kids are down. We're running over to the dome. There's like a group that kind of flocks over at some point, and we're always like, yeah, welcome back. And but I saw the Grand Canyon as an adult. And I remember that moment of awe where I was just blown away by what I saw. And it was when I think of the fact when, you watch children in those moments of Oz, and you just don't have that as an adult.
Yeah.
And Burning Man has changed over the years. People always talk about how it's changed. And actually, fundamentally, how it hasn't changed is the first time Burning Man user experience, I don't think is fundamentally changed. People still have that moment of awe. They still get something from the experience. And the fact that Burning Man has been able to keep that part of the culture, even as society and everything else around us changes and moves forward, that piece is still very intact. And I think that's what keeps the Burning Man spirit alive.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of what you were describing earlier about just even people having that kind of like enthusiastic consent experience from the beginning, there's so much that we do, because as human beings, we're basically a collection of habits and thought systems, right? Things that we've been programmed to the way we see the world. Touch, who is actually one of the founders of the Human Carcass Wash, he actually had done some workshops in San Diego that I attended where they walk you through the experience of asking someone for a hug and having them say no, and you respectfully accepting that and not allowing, like maybe like working on seeing where your mind goes. Like, oh no, am I unattractive? Oh no, is this person pushing? Maybe it has nothing to do with you. Maybe that person just doesn't feel like hugging you right now. Maybe that person is going through this other experience. Going through and being very present with all of these thoughts is a part of this like whole ecosystem of experiences we go through before we even get to this next step, which is like, orgy. So that experience, I feel like what you're describing about coming into that environment, it's almost like, diving headfirst into the pool so you can kind of see what the sensations are, get used to the cold water right away, get the extreme things so you can take a lesson you've learned from there and go and implement that in your day-to-day experience, in your life, out in the default world, even as a burner, anywhere. And I think like that's a really beautiful thing that you guys are providing, is an environment for you guys for people that have that experience.
And the word is safe. A safe space for whatever that experience you want to have. And if you have the right people who are willing to do it with you, and the it's a place of yes. There are a lot of people who you can things that you can only imagine if you say out loud, hey, it'd be really great if 3 people and I did this thing. Next thing you know, this thing is happening. And so, but that, that's a powerful thing. Getting what you want, having your desires, addressing your desires is very powerful. And the fact that we can provide a safe space for people to have those experiences and to take all those other things off of it that can weigh down people.
Yeah. And I think just when you were giving the description earlier of having the conversation before you get in there, and then like if you need to have another conversation, stepping out of it and getting back in. Whenever I hear that, I kind of think of it in terms of like the same way I tell people, like, lay your clothes out for the night before you take your acid.
It's a good one.
You don't want to do that in the middle of the experience.
Look, you used an analogy earlier about swimming. We provide a swimming pool, but we don't just throw you in. We have lifeguards, and we teach you to swim, and we teach you to walk into the pool a little bit at a time. So if the first step, the water is too cold, you can step back out. And, it does occasionally happen that somebody will walk into the dome with their partner, and they walk right back out 30 seconds later. It's like, nope, this is not for us. And we don't give them a hard time. We thank them. We tell, we ask them if there's anything wrong or if there's anything we can, help them with. And if they're just if this isn't their thing, they're free to go.
Yeah.
There's
and
no pressure.
that's an honorable experience to be able to admit that out loud. Like we're not necessarily ready, or this isn't even for us. Like that's okay.
I don't want to. We've talked a lot about safe, and we've talked about all the consent. I don't want to leave anyone the impression that there are not sometimes 20-person piles of incredibly sexy, interesting bodies of all types and all ages and all orientations. And there's some beyond what your fantasy is of what happens inside absolutely does happen daily inside.
If you've seen Caligula or Eyes Wide Shut, there you go.
There was a lot of talk about an orgy scene in Westworld, and we were like, there was an orgy in Westworld? We're like, oh, that colored people, people with body paint fucking, it's like, they called that an orgy? It's like, that's Tuesday.
Not an orgy.
That's not, paint somebody gold and have them kissing in a corner. That's nice
line
and
from
all,
Crocodile Dundee, that's not a knife. This is a knife.
I want to go back a little bit to the history. You said that it was 2002 when it was established?
It actually was established in 2003.
2003 was the first year.
Was the first year that it was official camp.
When it was not a dome. It's still not a dome.
It's never been a dome.
It's never been a dome.
It was still just a giant tent.
Name, though.
It's fucking intense.
Yeah,
it's fucking
the Orgy
intense.
Dome is fucking intense.
Yeah.
I joined in 2006. I had been in Mutator before that. And when I left the band, Jennifer was absolutely insistent that I join the camp. So my wife and I camped with them the first year. And then the second year, I went back to my LA crew. We camped together. And in 2008, I came back. And then in 2009, I convinced the rest of my LA crew to come join Orgy Dome.
Oh,
and
wow.
So that's how that happened. And
How many people in that crew?
At that time, there were seven more of us. My wife and I and seven more.
Yeah. So in 2004-ish, how many years had you been at the burn?
I've been going since 2000. This is my 20th burn in a row.
Where were you guys in that time period?
2007 was our first burn.
That was our first burn in 2007.
Okay.
And
we missed 8, and then we joined ATTOL in 2009, and we've been there ever since.
Yeah.
And had you been navigating, sex culture prior to this, like non-traditional sex culture?
So we had been sexually social for a long time, but it wasn't like a calling for us. It wasn't what we were looking for. But so the first year that we went, it was like one of the hottest years in record, and we just had a tent. We did everything wrong. That typical like it's a tent underneath the sun, and I just remember like laying naked on our welcome mat because we're welcoming people. We brought a welcome mat, and just going like I'm gonna die. It's just too hot. And so the next time we were going, I'm like, we need a place with air conditioning. There's got to be some place with air conditioning. So he's looking through the different camps, and he sees AC Orgy Dome, and he's like, how about this? And I'm like, okay, great place to have sex. And I go, can you check to see if AC really means air conditioning? Because this is Burning Man. I mean, it could be anal cranial for all I know. We could like roll up there and be like, hey, welcome, bend over. My head's coming up your ass. Like I hadn't, So honestly, when we first found the camp, I was just looking for a place with air conditioning.
Her name is Shade for a reason.
Yeah, Shade.
Yes. It's not because I throw it. It's just because I want it over my head.
You know what? I've heard that exact thing from a couple of different people, and usually somebody else in the room will go, "Oh yeah, right, air conditioning." But no, totally like, no, you don't understand. It's like it's really nice in there.
We have 14 ACs and 2 large swamp coolers that cool the place, and we have roof vents and stuff. I've been involved in the alternative lifestyle stuff for 40 years.
Yeah.
And I'm an attorney. I represent adult entertainment companies and alternative lifestyle groups. That's what I do for a living. I'm a First Amendment lawyer.
Wow.
So I protect this kind of activity in the default world. So it's kind of, this is my chance to walk the walk instead of just talk the talk.
Yeah. And so the experience of building the camp and getting ingrained in the alternative lifestyle, poly, open cultures, and creating the people that we wanted around us kind of put us in touch with leaders or early developers of communities in LA and in San Francisco and in Portland. And so we kind of had an adjacent seat to building community. And Shade is really, really good at picking people and seeing people for who they are. And so, we take a lot of pride in taking that kind of what we learned about how to build a camp at Burning Man and turning it. We're going to an event tonight with a group that now has 1,700 members. That was the founders were people from our camp that we feel like we kind of had a role in training them how to learn about consent and how to build a community. And
they took it from there. They, took what we were doing at Burning Man and said, we want to actually take it out to the community. And so it's amazing to actually watch community grow even outside of Burning Man, but from our community too.
Yeah.
We're a virus. Resistance is futile.
The best kind of virus. It's the one we want to spread everywhere. Laszlo, so did you immediately come in and take like a leadership position, or what was your involvement?
I was
in the
sort of
beginning?
voluntold. When I first joined the camp, there was maybe 25 or 30 people in it. I don't recall exactly. And when I came back in 2008, Jen had asked me to step up and do some stuff. And Dr. Dave, who was one of the original founders, had sort of, I don't want to speak ill of him, but he had, shall we say, slipped a bit in his managerial skills. Yeah. And so somebody needed to kind of step up. And because of my background and my organizational skills, I had kind of been involved in it. I like to consider myself in the past more of a lieutenant. I'm not the guy in charge, but I'll help out where I can. And I'm also pretty good with electronics and vehicles and tech. I'm the guy that can fix stuff. Yeah. So it's just sort of grown organically that I've become more and more involved in the leadership position. And then when Lefty and Shade had announced that they were going to take a step back a number of years ago, and we'd started putting a group together, and myself and some of the other camp members decided they were going to step up. And then what happened was Shade had a medical issue pop up on the Monday of Burning Man, and they had to leave right then. And it wasn't like a gentle handoff. It was sort of drop the mic, we're out, bye, It's all yours now. And so we got through it, and then we put the organization together, and they've never left. They've always been involved. And they're now officially back on the board.
We knew from the start as we were building this, because when we took it over, there was basically like kind of three groups of people who, it was a total of 7 people who were trying to put this thing on over the years. And you get tired as a volunteer. You're trying to put a camp every year. And so when we offered to help, it was just, how can we help? But that when you're volunteering and you're putting on a camp, you're going to have a life cycle. Your ability to continue to do it. And as the camp grew, what we wanted it was to grow beyond us. Like, we're going to take it as far as we think we can take this. But part of when we grow it, how can we grow it simultaneously so we can pass it off? And it's not just we're exhausted, we're not going to do it anymore. We can't, it's like, let's find the people like Al and all these other members of our camp that we were bringing in. We were trying to bring in future leaders. We were trying to bring in people who we could hand it off to and say, now you've seen our vision. What's your vision? Right. Where is this going to go next?
When you say grow, are you describing like the number of campmates that you'd be, like the size of the camp you'd be expanding, or growing the kind of orgy dome it would be?
All of the above.
And so, just to kind of, because I know it's been a little, it was a ragtag group of people who were giving everything they had to put the camp together. Shade and I do own an event management company and do large things. And so we were like, we can help. We can professionalize the way that you do a camp structure and have dues and things. And so we helped for 2 years. And then the person who was the financial backer moved out of the country and just kind of handed us the keys. And so we were smart enough to look at people like Al, who had been in the camp before us, who had always been there, and say, what do we need to do to keep you? Because we can't put this on without you, and we can't put this on without Zigzag from Boston, and we can't put this on without, just say that, we'll take responsibility for bringing this thing, but we need all of you to help. And then, I think then 2 years ago, then Shade and I said, we need to step back as the everything. And part of it is, I think the mission is so important and so needs to be more public. Yeah. And there are certain ways in which we couldn't be the face of the camp because of our other things we do in the world. And we're like, we need people, leaders and a board that can stand there in front of a camera and say, we run the Orgy Dome.
Right. It's really important to be unapologetic about it and see the beauty in what you're doing, the long-term plan of it and how it's contributing to the world. Because if any of that hesitation was to exist, there's a lot of people in the default who are, very scared of their own sexuality and scared of the direction the world is going in, who would look for ways to pick at it. So it's really important.
People are always trying to undermine it. I mean, it's funny. I've actually had circumstances where I'm talking about Burning Man out in the outside world, and nobody knows, from my professional demeanor that I'm actually involved in it. And they're like, first they're stunned, and then it's like, have you heard about this Orgy Dome thing? I'm like, yeah. Isn't it just a bunch of hippies? I'm like, well, not exactly. Well, how do you know? That's kind of a long story. I'm never going to be a United States District Court judge. I mean, if the FBI did a background check on me and saw the kind of stuff that I was doing, this is disqualifying, but I think that the mission is important. And so I don't have a problem being a face for the time being. Now I have a sunset clause. I agreed to be president for one more year. I came in and did some things. I sort of put the camp together as a corporation, got us our nonprofit status, built some more management structure into it so that we can grow the younger people. I mean, I'm not a kid. I'm significantly older than most of the people in the camp. And I don't want to do this. I want to have fun at Burning Man with my young wife. So next year I will be a board member and I'll help out where I can, but I'm not going to be running stuff. And so someone else will step up and do it for a couple of years, and then they'll step down.
And just how we talk about, like the new person, a lot of people who are helping out on the board, they've been new to camp. I mean, our camp has probably grown with people the most, I'd say, in the past 3 and 4 years. And again, it's those fresh new ideas. That's what we want to bring. So us doing it over and over again, I mean, we take in all sorts of suggestions and everything. We try to incorporate everything, but we want those fresh ideas. We want it to go into a different direction, becoming more inclusive, pushing that we are going to really teach consent culture. All these things were ideas that weren't 100% there at the beginning that we really had to make a focus. And that was something that we were proud to do.
Yeah, they have to percolate for a while. And you really have to run this stuff around your head and try little experiments and see what works and what doesn't. I know one of the things that I feel strongly about is taking this out into the default world. And so, I mean, we're actually starting to look at the logistics of that because we have the entire camp in one huge trailer. And we can't take that to a small regional. It's literally too large. So now we're starting to think about, well, are we going to get another vehicle, like a small bobtail, that we can put part of the camp in that? So if we want to go to the Arizona regional and put up a small Orgy Dome and do this there, that we could do that. We actually had a presence at Folsom last year. And I would like to see us doing a couple, 3 regionals or smaller events, Lucidity, Lightning in a Bottle, stuff like that in the near future.
No, you're by the way, holy crap, what a perfect mixture of people to have in a leadership position in a camp, like an attorney working in the adult entertainment industry, event producers. I mean, there's no way this wasn't going to be successful. But from what you're describing, the thing that I kept thinking is that to me now, since we've been having this conversation, I totally see the Orgy Dome as being a similar service as what Dr. Bronner's brings to the playa. Because I even had friends who were camped around the corner from you guys a couple of years ago that they were back there every day. The same way that people when they're camped next to Bronner's, they're over there showering every day.
We think of it as a gift.
Yeah,
we really do.
Oh no, it's all for sure a gift, but it's also it feels like a kind of almost like a service, the same way that showering is a place to go fuck. But the same thing that was making me think is that I know that also Dr. Bronner's has that smaller presence at the local regionals. They always come to Utopia. So I think that definitely is very much the next step. And I'd love to see that at some of the other regionals.
So would we.
Yeah. And that's one part about having our board now has 11 members and, Shade and I are part of it. And is the idea of doing that is taking this to regional events, taking it to Folsom Street, taking it to other things and really expanding. And some of the people on the board have created these other communities, some, poly communities and things like that. And so I have experience of sending those out into the community and actually expanding the message beyond just burners to other places. And one thing I did want to say, you asked about kind of the perception of, what is Burning Man? What is, and so I just wanted to tell a little personal story. We owned a business forever, and actually now I have a boss for the first time, and for the last few years. And Cosmopolitan did a story about our camp 2.5 years ago. And they did, they followed 3 couples into the Orgy Dome, and they wrote for Mainstream Magazine a relatively good story. Got a few things wrong, got a lot of things right about the experience of that. And it was like getting millions of views and all this stuff about what's the Orgy Dome of Burning Man. And well, the Rupert Murdoch papers and the UK Sun and the Drudge Report decided to do a little research, and they did a story like behind it where they went to our website and they had a big picture and they said the couple behind the Orgy Dome and had a picture of Shade and I. And
my gosh.
So I at work, my boss is, if you ever watch The Simpsons, is a Ned Flanders. He's that kind of like Christian he doesn't hate anybody. He's just loves everybody, and he just doesn't know why everyone just doesn't get along and help their neighbor. So when he you go to Burning Man, and he's like, I did some research. I found out Burning Man isn't all sex and drugs. It's art and community, and it's people just being. And so he was like, I can view you as a good human because I know that you go there for the art and the community.
I mean, here you are. You've been we've been together for 30 years. We've been married for 26 years. We have 2 beautiful children. He looked at your professionals. He's looking at us as this, and he goes, well, obviously you're going for the art and community, and I've just underestimated this place.
And then it's like, no, actually, we run the fucking Orgy Dome.
My wife's mom thinks Burning Man is a satanic cult, and I've corrupted her.
Oh my gosh! No, I mean, I would say, like, honestly, if anything, I what I do is storytelling. This has been what I do in some fashion or form. There's a lot of power to having a couple that's been together for as long as you have, and the way you work together to be a representative of something like this, because. It was part of like when you were describing Folsom Street, I was thinking about the phrase street cred. Like Folsom Street, I've heard, I've never attended myself. This is completely anecdotal, but I've heard like a few stories of friends that have gone and they felt that like they could use some help with the consent conversation because people are like grabbing each other.
It's different. They need a lot.
With the consent culture it's slowly spreading, but it's become in. With the Me Too movement, it's now front and center. People are really starting to look at it,
right?
Which was, we were outed basically as doing this, but because we were that married couple, it just it seemed okay somehow. But it's nice when I sit there and they say, well, what do you do at Burning Man? And I can be like, look, I've been teaching consent culture for the past 7 years.
Right.
This may be new for what society is focusing on right this moment, but we have been preparing for this time. This is necessary. And, we've only been able to get it out in our small part of the world, but it's important. And again, we talk about kids, it's important to teach the younger generation. We have to change how we talk about our sexuality. When I was growing up and I was a young teen trying to find my sexuality in a kind of the stereotypical, if you want to think, male-female relationships that we were doing, as a woman, if you wanted to have sex, you were a slut. And if you didn't want to have sex, you were a prude. And there was no win. And so girls were taught you could just let it happen. Letting it happen means you silence yourself and you don't speak. You don't speak your wants or your needs. You don't speak your yeses and you don't speak your nos. And boys were then taught to push and to keep pushing. And that was called romantic. And when you tell people you're supposed to ask and ask for consent and talk about it, and people say, well, that's not romantic at all. I go, no, we've trained our children to think that's no romantic. It doesn't have to be that way. If children learn from the beginning how to talk about sexuality, to feel good about whatever they want, whatever they're feeling, whoever and however they want to express it, that is going to be the most romantic thing that we can teach them. We have to change from the very beginning how we teach sexuality and consent.
Absolutely.
And I think it really, the kink community figured it out first. Obviously, if you're going to do some things that could be dangerous, that could be whatever else, you've got to really talk about it, and you really got to get consent beforehand so everyone is okay. And the open kind of poly community, where you've got relationships and you got a lot of people's feelings, and we're like, you know what? Let's take a cue from the kink community and let's do this, have these conversations, and so I think it's now, but where it's like, you know, you talked about Folsom Street, the kind of older gay culture is still, they've got a lot of things they've been doing for a long time. And so what, you mean I got to ask before I grab some guy's cock? It's like, but it's, that's coming, but so that may be one of the last, but we're talking about teenagers, teaching consent culture to teenagers so they learn it right from the beginning, so they're not with this whole idea.
Take time, because as society, it's good that we move in new directions and that we learn something new and say, the way we were doing it before, we thought it was okay, but it really isn't. And now let's change our point of view. And we have to be proactive about it. We can't constantly say, well, we thought it's okay, so it's still okay. No, there was issues and there were problems, and we just weren't focusing on them. We weren't.
It's like a lot of other things in life. As you live it and you learn what works and what doesn't, you try to make things better. And so, in a lot of the communities that I started out in, open communities, the sort of the running phrase was anything other than no is yes. Okay. Huh. And that was the way that people thought about it. Obviously, if somebody says no, that means stop.
Right.
But you're free to do anything you want to someone until they say no. And that seemed like a good idea at the time, because it was better than do whatever you want without, any sort of sanction.
It was a step in the right direction.
It was a step in the right direction, but it didn't really address the underlying problem, which is people need to feel like they have agency. And so what has happened in this community, and what we're very proud of, is when we talk about enthusiastic consent, our approach to this is anything other than an enthusiastic yes is a no. So if somebody says, hey, would you like me to do X? And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah. That's not good enough. That means that they're not really giving you the kind of consent that we want them to give you to do it. Right. And if people treat each other with that kind of respect, the sexual assault and the misunderstandings that sometimes are considered to be sexual assault just don't happen.
And I will tell you, as a camp, so the original idea is just a safe space for people to fuck. Okay. And then it's like, well, what can we do in addition to that? That's kind of like more people have found that somewhere else in the world. Well, let's talk about in teaching enthusiastic consent. And I will tell you, we're starting to have discussions about, in this era of Me Too, where this idea of consent is not, I'm hearing it for the first time, oh, you're supposed to do this. It's like, yeah, we got that. It's like, what is our space? Okay, it's a place you can fuck. Yeah, I've seen that. Oh, it's consent. Yeah, we get it. And like, what new elements are we going to bring in to continue to be moving the conversation forward? It'll never lose the safe space to fuck. It'll never lose the focus on consent. But what else will it be on top of that? Right. It'll be like, wow, I've never had that conversation. I never had that experience. And that's what our camp will always be looking to do, is to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah. We actually teach classes too. I mean, it's an open space to play from noon till sunrise, but we usually have classes from 10:30ish till we open. And they can be, everything from how to spin a flogger to how to give a blowjob to, stunt cock, how to give a hand job. We have kind of a funny story in our camp where one of the guys was going to be throwing a hand job class, and they asked around camp who wants to get a hand job, who wants to be like the stunt for a hand job. And one of the guys volunteered, thinking it was going to be a girl giving the class. Yeah. And he walks in there and it's like, oh, it's a guy. Wait a minute. And so his playa name now is Stunt Cock.
I totally thought that when I saw some of the kissing booths. I'm like, my first burn. Yeah. I was like, I kind of want to make out with somebody, and I was like, oh wait, I don't know if I'm ready to make out with a guy just yet. Let me come back to my third burn, and we'll revisit that discussion. A lot of you've always, you were describing for a long time. You've been a part of these communities. A lot of this conversation always brings me back to the people that more or less get labeled burners have tended to be on like the leading edge of thought, and a lot of times we're kind of like in like smaller communities where we're having these discussions, but these conversations always eventually inevitably find their way to the mainstream, especially when they're going towards the right direction of how to think and how to ask for consent and all this kind of stuff. So a lot of what it's like the test lab we're describing. This is the lab. This is where the conversation begins. This is where we begin to explore it. And I think what's interesting right now is that in a lot of the mainstream, a lot of this conversation is spreading out there, and people are starting to have the realizations about what you were describing right now, about like the things little girls are taught, that you're either, you know, a slut or a prude. Like which the fuck is it? Like what is the happy medium? And now they're looking back, and a lot of people are looking at previous generations and just feeling anger and rage. And I think like that's probably what you're seeing a lot of like in the mainstream right now. I wonder if you have any advice on how people should navigate that. Should we be going back and like getting angry at songs that came out, 50, 60 years ago?
I think it's one thing to say, look, we recognize that a particular song has some like socially unacceptable concepts in it now. Yeah. But there's a doctrine in the law called ex post facto enforcement, which is where you create a new crime and then you apply it to somebody that did it before it was actually a crime. And it's unconstitutional to do that to somebody. You're talking about the R. Kelly and the Michael Jackson things that are going on right now.
Well, R. Kelly. I don't know how that counts.
I am not a rape apologist. I want to make it real clear.
I'll give you a good example. Good example is, have you seen that meme with like the Harrison Ford movies? Like how many times has Harrison Ford been in an uncomfortable situation with a woman alone and like kind of forcing himself on her, and she says no, yes, and then romantic music starts playing.
So I love Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. I can't stand Mel Gibson.
To directly answer your question, I think intent is where we have to look at it. And so if somebody's intent is to say, I know what you find comfortable, I know the way you define this, and I'm going to choose to ignore it and do something, and push, or an intent of something, 50 years ago, if that was, then if that's the intent, it's clearly wrong. We clearly need to, but if we have changed the society and we view something that used to be okay and it's not okay, then what we do is we educate. We don't punish when the intent was not to be hurtful or taught. It's just like we now know better and we now act differently. So if you're acting the way that you did 30 years ago, we're going to teach you how you need to communicate now if you're going to be present in our communities. Yeah. And it's really a requirement for entry. You're just... if you're not willing to play by our rules and view with the modern way that we practice consent, the way we practice treating people, the way we practice honoring people for their identities, if you're not willing to do that, then you're just not welcome in our community.
Right. How do you approach that in your camp? Maybe not necessarily with camp mates, but even any visitors, other burners. How do you approach it when somebody has crossed the line and you need to have that difficult conversation?
I like to look at things as coming from a position of understanding and a position of education. That's my first thing that I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to educate. One, I want to understand where they are and where they were coming from. Again, was this intent to hurt or accidental intent because someone just didn't understand what they were supposed to do? And I think that makes a big difference because if there's an intent to hurt, again, that's a different mentality. If there is just a not understanding what you are supposed to do, you can educate someone. Right. That education process isn't always easy, but it's important that we go through it and that we make people feel that when they learn and when they're going through this education process, that they're moving forward and that's an acceptable thing. Yeah. I don't like the concept of continually punishing people who just don't know. That to me, you're punishing people for ignorance. I want to change that so we don't have the ignorance anymore and we can educate as many people as possible and say, let's make this so it works well for everyone.
Yeah. And we have different responsibilities for people who are in our camp and people visiting. Our number one responsibility is to keeping the dome safe. And so if we see something, we apologize to people saying, look, you may be perfect, you may have been doing nothing wrong, but I saw something that I'm not okay with, and so I'm going to ask you to leave because my job is to keep this space safe for everyone. Right. So maybe I'm the asshole, and maybe I'm in the wrong, but I just have to do it. And
you're taking on that burden of leadership by creating this space.
And you have to err always on the side of caution.
Right.
Now you have camp members who may have come in, who got in here, and they have a different idea of, we've had to ask some camp members not to come back because they had a different idea of what, everyone wants to be in an orgy. They're just that's just their religion and their repression. That's why if you just, kind of throw them in the middle of it, then they'll drop all that and they'll join the fun. It's like, no, if someone says, politely says, I'm not into it, it doesn't matter if that they're, that they're in the, that they fucked 6 people this morning. If they're saying no right now, you've got to say no. And if you ask again, you're not one of us.
Yeah, no, that example you're giving, I'm sorry, to me, it made me think of, again, like drugs. Like sometimes when people discover substances for the first time, they think, no, people would love it if they just try it. Trust me,
they dose them. Yeah,
no, it doesn't count.
One of the things that we struggle with is when there's what we call a consent violation. Okay, there are a lot of people out there who think in black and white. And it's like, okay, well, he touched her the wrong way or she touched him the wrong way. And so we're going to excommunicate this person from our community. That's not the approach we generally take. Now, there are certain kinds of, a sexual assault, a legitimate sexual assault is going to suffer some significant consequence. But many times these things are just misunderstandings. Somebody does something, they think, they ask for a certain kind of consent, they hear a response that they interpret one way, and either because they're high or the other person's high or the noise, it's loud, they don't hear what's going on, there's a legitimate reason why there's a mistake that's made. And so somebody's feelings get hurt. And so in that perspective, we take the perspective of trying to be like social justice warriors. We want to help people work through the misunderstandings, figure out why they happened, so that it doesn't happen again.
And start a healing process.
But one of the most important parts of this is how the person responds when we approach them. If there's a consent violation and we go to somebody and go, hey, look, there's been a problem. And they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. What can I do to make it better? That's great. That's the kind of response we get. But if we get fuck her, she doesn't know what she's talking about, they're gone. Yeah. Because what that shows is that we're not going to be able to correct the bad behavior.
And as we've said, we've been out there since 2003, and there's never been a major, there's never been an sexual assault, there's never been a rape, there's never been a rape allegation, there's never any of those things, because again, it is the absolute last place you would ever do something, violate someone's consent, because you're doing it in a crowded room full of people who just got a consent speech. And so if you say, hey, I'm telling you to stop, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to hear you say that and listen.
Part of our orientation speech is you guys are our eyes in there, and we can't watch everybody all the time, even though we might like to, but we can't. And so if the person next to you appears to be in some sort of distress, please let us know.
Yeah. Can I ask you, and we fully respect that this is totally anecdotal, but what percentage of the time would you say it's a misunderstanding, miscommunication, and is easily resolved versus, no, we got to get this guy out of here?
Well, I think that there's some people, our rule is it's couples or moresomes only, and you come in with the intent to play with somebody, that you're walking in with. And we have people, the desire to be part of our camp is really strong for some people. I mean, we had people in the past trying to cut the side so they could peek in, we had people, wow. And so it is a thing of people posing as a couple, who have no intention of playing together, to get inside and then go and approach everybody and say, hey, can I join you? Can I join you? Mm. And so it really is, they're there for the wrong purpose anyway. And so it doesn't matter. It's not about waiting for them to do a consent violation. It's like you're not in there to play with a person or people you brought. You're there to try to, pick up. And there is so much sexy going on that most of the time, most of the people will ignore the one creepy guy who got snuck in who's trying to approach people, but it's our job to make sure that they don't stay in very long and they get
Interesting. Out. That's a massive clarification, because I can tell you I've heard multiple times the conversation of, oh, I really want to go check out the Orgy Dome. I can't go in there alone. Hey, you want to go together so that we can, just like a nightclub, for example, that tries to keep the male-female equation.
We are not a hookup space.
Yeah.
That's not what we are.
There's tons of places to hook up on Playa. We're not one of them. When you do hook up somewhere else, please come back to our space. But we're not where you're supposed to go to try to find someone. If we see couples split up and start going around hitting on other groups and couples, we try to remove that. But again, it can be difficult for us that's something we're constantly kind of fighting.
Yeah.
Or just somebody will join a couple and say, let me go in with you. And then they, hive off and, we'll see them, running around and, we'll extract them. But it can be hard to spot. And it's we also do tell everyone like Al said, like that we invite people to be ambassadors of our space. So to make sure that people are respecting the space and what it provides.
Yeah, God, can I tell you? It's as I'm hearing all of this, what it's all coming to me is that. A lot of people might think that the gift that you're bringing to the playa is like this physical structure and like the wiping of it, and like all this physical stuff, right? But like as we're having this conversation, like, man, heavy is the burden. Like this is really what you're doing. What you're bringing is every part of your energy, your psychological stability, the amount. I mean, this is heavy. Like making the wrong call on something like this is heavy. It can really hurt somebody. There's all these emotions you're bringing into it. There's a lot of energy that you're bringing into it, physically, emotionally. And I mean, like that's massive. I do not want that.
We don't want anybody to come out of this.
Thank God for you.
Saying that they had a bad time or that they were, touched by someone inappropriately. We really, we do not want that to happen.
That is
and
massive.
We're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, people will. It's a sexy thing, and people have heard what they think it is, and so they'll get some girl from camp to bring them in, or they'll come in as two guys pretending to be gay, and as soon as they get in the door, they go in different directions.
Yeah.
And we are constantly upgrading our security procedures and our consent speeches. Like, so for example, now we have people out at the street when they come in checking IDs, but they're also watching around the bike areas so we can see if a guy walks up to a couple and asks them to bring him in. And, it's sort of like a game of whack-a-mole. Every time we figure out one thing that they're doing, someone will figure out another thing.
Wow.
But it's constantly evolving, and we're getting better and better, and I hope, maybe we'll be better this year. I certainly hope so.
That is really incredible.
But I do have to say for the Burning Man community too, just in general though, honestly, we should have more problems than we do.
Yeah.
Most people are very respectful of the place and what we're trying to do. When we give a consent speech, they're like, thank you, this was great information. We seldom have the people who they're not paying attention because they really don't care. And the Burning Man community and the people who are part of our community, they want to be a part of the community, and they're wonderful to work with.
And working as a greeter, as we said, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it is you feel so good. You're like, wow, look at these amazing people who came in. They had an experience. They thanked me when they came out. They told us a little bit about, maybe it was the first time. Maybe, they got over some sexual injury that they were dealing with, and this was a place for them to kind of exercise those old stuff. And you just feel like you're on cloud nine when you're done doing it. So if it was all people trying to sneak in and people trying to use the space wrongly, we would be exhausted at the end of the shift.
It's really not. I mean, maybe one or two people a day will be a problem. We've had days, like entire days, where nothing goes wrong.
Right.
Just none. And it's amazing. But like Lefty said, the best part of this for me is when somebody comes out that's never done anything like this before, or I see them like the next day I'm doing a second greeter shift and they're back. It's like they came back. I love that. It makes my heart swell. It really,
and I love
it's
the
a high.
inclusivity of it. It's, sometimes people will be like, oh, well, what is it? Just like the young, beautiful people. And it's like, it's everyone.
Yeah.
And however you identify and whoever you are and whatever age you are, it's just people go and they experience something new. And the fact that they can look around and see the diversity of life and sexuality all around them, they come back out with a much broader picture of the world around them too. And so their sexuality is just not what they perceive of it. They get an opportunity to see sexuality in so many different shapes and forms.
So let's go through it. I want to go through a virtual experience of what happens. I'm here with my gal. We're waiting in line. What happens next?
All right, so you start. Actually, what happens is you park your bike, and we have an area where you park your bike and all of that stuff,
and
then
lock
you
it up.
come to the front gate, and there are at least one and sometimes two sort of people at the very front gate, and they will make sure that you aren't too inebriated to go in, because if you're too high, you can't give legal consent.
We ask three questions. You say, are you 18? Are you over 18? And so you show ID that you're over 18. It's like, are you sober enough to both give and perceive and revoke consent? And so we make sure you look at them, and then are you a couple or moresome? So if you meet those three things, it's like you are intending to come in and use our space as directed with the people that you're walking in with. And then we let you into the second spot.
Right. So between my bike parking, before I even get in line, there's already a filtration process.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And so then you go through the line. Sometimes you get right to the front. Sometimes there's people waiting in line. And then you get your consent speech. We have a small sort of a holding area. And sometimes we'll have multiple teams of consent people in there. We give you about a 15 or 20 minute run through. And it's obviously a lot of it is the consent talk, but there's also the elements of like, what are the logistical things about the dome, where things are, that you're going to leave your shoes outside of the dome. We have racks where you put stuff, that you're not allowed to bring cameras or cell phones in. And if we see one, we'll smash it with a hammer. We show them the hammer. We want people to be able to do this without like having their picture end up on Facebook.
Absolutely.
You know? And so
I've honestly never seen a picture taken from inside the dome ever appear online, other than the ones that we've taken during setup of the empty mattresses.
And we're so anal about that if we see people walking around on the street taking pictures of the people in line, we'll go out and confront them. Yeah. So then they get their consent speech. They go through the logistical thing. They get a wristband and a number. It's kind of like the old deli counter now serving number 7. Mm-hmm. And we have a number board up. And we have the next thing they do is they go into Aphrodite's garden. And if there's no wait, then they go right to the front of the dome.
But usually there's a wait.
Usually there's a wait. And actually, Aphrodite's Garden's really cool because there's this really sort of anticipatory sexual energy in there. Yeah. And Aphrodite's Garden is not a play space, but people will make out and they'll kiss and they'll sort of cuddle with each other and the excitement starts building.
Yeah. Well, the foreplay is happening long before you get naked, right?
And if people are looking to perhaps hook up with other couples, there may be seen people and, you could see people waving in each other. And so for those people who are open to more, it's a great opportunity to actually mix and mingle with people before you even enter. We've had some people go, they're number 78, but we're number 84, but can we go in with them?
One of the secrets is yes.
And they were like, of course.
You can always go in as a foursome. And the other secret is if you draw number 69, you get to go right to the front of the line.
Nice. Okay, so I'm wondering, is it like at a restaurant where like the hostess is watching to see who's finishing up their meals and they're like, all right, getting ready to see who
what we do is once we call their number, and it is actually a deli counter number that we use, people go in and we show them where they remove their shoes. And
so is it just a counter? Like, are you just counting how many people are inside the dome?
No, it's the number.
You pull a deli number.
No, I got that part. But how do you know when the next person is going? There's
we
room
have
for more
people inside that monitor the space.
That's what I'm saying. So the people monitoring, are they like watching? They're like, looks like these two are about to be, and they're done.
No.
We'll look around.
They look for empty space.
We'll look around and go,
physically
there's 5 or 10 mattresses. And so let's pull a bunch of people. That's one of the things that some of the volunteers, we have these buckets. So when you actually, the last stop, when your number's been called, you put your shoes in your big jackets and then we give you a fuck it, which is really just a Home Depot bucket that we painted fuck it on it. And
we covered up the Home Depot with the bucket, and on the back side, though, we leave the let's do this. I've been waiting for Home Depot to shut us down at some point.
But once you go inside, because once you go inside, I mean, it's mood lighting, and you take off articles of clothing, and then maybe you were on the mattress and you're like, hey, let's fuck on the couch, and you move, and then a new couple comes down and you're like, well, my underwear is under those people and my this is, and so a lot of stuff gets left. So we tell everyone, put everything
in the bucket, and you'll keep. The other thing is we also have safer sex supplies too.
Yeah.
So and we'll have safer. We are, as people are checking inside to see. Want to make sure everything's okay and how much space we have. I mean, we can tell by when people come out, it looks like spaces are opening up.
Right.
But we carry condoms and lube, and we'll kind of walk around and anyone need any condoms? Any
coffee,
lube?
tea?
Is there sheets or something that we need to take care of? Something like that, some ongoing maintenance. And so we'll come on out and we'll be like, send in 5 more, groups, or, call in 5 more numbers or something like that. But it's interesting, I'm under the impression of the more the merrier. So some people will, I'm looking around and they're like, oh, we're completely full. And I'll walk in and I go, nuh-uh, 20 more couples, bring them in. People got to move over.
Standing up in the corner.
We do want to create a critical mass of sexual energy. We don't want somebody on every other mattress. We want people in there playing next to other people that are sexy. And we want them to experience being sexually social. Now, Now, obviously, in the just us area, we're a little bit more respectful about giving people their individual space because if they're in just us, they don't want to be touched, they don't want to be watched. And by the way, one of the things in our
but in just
speech,
us, we can have just us 8. You can go in as 8 people and say, we just don't want to be. The 8 of us are going to play. We just don't want anyone else to ask.
One of the
to join.
things that we're very serious about is there's a difference between sort of glancing around and seeing the person you're next to and voyeuristically watching someone. And if you're going to do the latter, you have to get their consent before you do it. Yeah. So it's okay we want you to be able to look around and go, wow, they're cute. Oh, they're cute. But we don't want you plopping down on a couch next to a mattress and going, check that out.
Yeah.
And we talk about that in the consent speech. So all that is covered and people go, oh, and then they're happy about that because then they're thinking, that means no one's going to do that to me.
Yeah.
And again, we want people to feel safe. We want people to feel comfortable.
And I feel like that even falls under like a no spectators thing that Burning Man in general has, right? Because like watching somebody with intention and consent is different than spectating from a distance.
Absolutely.
It is.
Which you 100% can do. If you ask them, you go, oh my God, you guys are so sexy. Mind if we watch? And it's like, they say, fuck yeah. It's like,
okay.
do it,
That's great. And some couples or groups, they want people to watch. You can tell by where they position themselves in the room.
There's a lot of symbiosis between exhibitionists and voyeurs. And we like to think that that's one of the things that we offer the playa, which is we have a place for both of them, and as long as everybody has consent and everybody's, negotiated the scene, they can do whatever they want in there.
Beautiful. Yeah. So, all right. So at it goes till sunrise, you said?
We go till sunrise every day.
Is there like a cleanup procedure?
There is.
Yeah, we used to go 24 hours, and then we just realized, that's a lot of people 24 hours a day. And so about 3 years ago, we made the decision to cut back. And so we close it from, after sunrise, when the last people are out, so it's closed till 1 or so in the afternoon. And so at 10, we'll have a crew come in. And, there's usually everyone's out by then, or maybe there's one person who's sleeping in the corner, usually a camp member of ours, not a guest. But, and then we'll just start cleaning the space, and we'll just go through and have a crew, and we'll replace the sheets. We'll move all the mattresses and get all the things out of there. And it really doesn't take more than a half an hour or so, but it is, we call it fucking Friday. On Friday, we have thousands and thousands of people there. Cleaning it Saturday morning you're just like, wow.
Same thing with Sunday morning, because people will come back after the burn. It's like, this is the thing that they've been waiting for all week. It's like, after the burn, we're going to the Orgy Dome. And so it goes like all night.
That's interesting. Is there a better day of the week to go that it'll be less of a line if I want to go?
You can never really
Monday
say.
or Tuesday.
It ramps up, but it was a couple of years ago, we were like slammed on Monday. It's just, you never know what's going to happen.
A little bit on location or how quickly people find where we are, but it usually is, if you get there Monday, middle of the day, you're not going to have a line. It might not even be full, but by Wednesday, it doesn't matter kind of what time of day you're there, it will be full. And by the evening, it is a little mind-blowing. This last year was the first year that we didn't run the camp by ourselves. So we actually joked that Shade and I got to go to Burning Man. We actually left camp and ran around and saw other things and did things like, do we like this event? So we're coming back at 4 a.m, passing Esplanade camps that have these gorgeous setups and these beautiful places to sit.
I'm envious of the beauty of these camps. I'm like, oh, it looks so nice.
And there's absolutely
there's nobody there.
There's nobody there. And, or going by this room with 15 massage tables, just sitting there, light on, door open. Nobody's using the massage tables. And we come back around the corner and we see a line, a block and a half long at 4:30 in the morning to get in the Orgy Dome. And I guess we must be doing something right.
Yeah, and again, we're just interconnected carports. I mean, one of the things we're trying to do this year is try to beautify the outside of the dome, but we've spent so much energy just trying to make this space work that you put it together with duct tape and bubble gum. I don't know, just as long as it fits. And
the generator to work.
Exactly. And let's get these bikes off the street, because when we say we can have a line about an hour, an hour
2
long,
hours,
2 hours sometimes. And one of the reasons why we created Aphrodite's Garden is because of the line. I didn't want people to queue up like it's Disneyland. I wanted people to be in a space that's interactive, not standing in a line.
And we want to respect the fact that this is Burning Man, and we don't want people standing in line wasting 2 hours of Burning Man time waiting to get in the Orgy Dome. Now, it's just a fact of life that we have that many people coming to the space.
Yeah.
But we try to get them in and out as quick as possible, no pun intended.
I have a question. So my post-coital snuggling is very important to me. How long can I do that before somebody nudges me?
Anyone out. Only
Okay.
if you're like sound asleep. We'll say we'll kind of wake you and say this really isn't a place to sleep.
Right.
But cuddling, those type of things. We don't chase people out at all. People self-select when they want to leave, and we've never had an issue with it.
Beautiful. You were about to say something. No, forgot. Good. So next, I was going to ask, like, what's the next plans? Your next plans are to beautify the outside more. You said you two are stepping down soon.
So we stepped down from being the sole leaders of the camp. Now we are just board members.
Right.
So responsible for pieces of the camp. And we have a professional board of directors. Laszlo is the president, and we have a treasurer and a vice president, and we are just run-of-the-mill board members.
We've tried to have enough people in leadership where we could sort of pass around the duties so that nobody gets overloaded.
Right. It was fun to watch a board do all the things that they were like, there's so much work to do, there's so much to be done. You're like, realize there was just two of us that were doing all this. So we loved watching, and they were so great. That first year that we were stepping back, they were like, we don't want you to do anything. We want you to enjoy yourselves and have a good time. We're like, no, we're fine. We're good here to help. And they were fantastic.
But it was funny. We always had these visions like, what's it going to be like? Are we going to get there and they're going to say, oh my God, when they're going to hit us with 50 questions? There's like, no is the other thing. They're like, oh no, everything's good. It's like, well, what about that over there? No, don't look, just go. No, it looks like it's on fire. No, I don't. There's nothing to see there. Just go away. We got everything under control.
Got it under control.
Good.
We're like, okay, if you say so, we'll go enjoy our
Actually,
work.
last year, and this is no disrespect to these guys, but it really has a lot to do with what the team did last year. Was the first year where we were like basically 100% public facing. The generator ran all week. The air conditioners were always on. We didn't run out of sheets. We didn't run out of condoms. It actually flowed just the way it's supposed to.
Only took a few years.
That's good. It took a lot of years, but part of it is that we, you get good at it at a certain level, and then you add another,
Totally.
18 by 30, and now you've got an extra number of bodies, which needs more sheets, which needs more couches, which needs more condoms, which needs more lube.
Keep moving
and
the goalposts.
It's constantly making it bigger.
As we went from that 18 by 18, 360 square foot space to a 4,000 square foot space. Think about how big your apartment or house is. That's how big our space is. Every year was new challenges as we grew to meet the demand of, because we hated seeing a line. We're like, we need to have it bigger. I think we finally now, for the size of the burn, we've got the right size of fuck space. We'll always continue to grow. We might grow the garden. We might grow, an extra area to give consent speeches or other things. But it's kind of like, if there's 180 people in there fucking this moment, I think that's enough. We don't really need more space.
We're actually starting to think about, should we actually buy a real dome? Because it's never been an actual Orgy dome.
Yeah.
And if we could put together a system that's easier to build on Playa, I actually have this vision of this like 2-story structure that's air conditioned with proper HVAC built in, where we can basically show up with the truck, get a crane, put it up like they put up Thunderdome, and in like 2 days we're good to go. Right?
Nice.
Instead of spending 4 days or 5 days.
And we
building.
love that he's thinking about that.
I can dig it.
For years we felt like we were the arbiters of no, because we were responsible for this, and everyone would come in with their burners with, I got this idea, we're going to build this thing, and it's got this crane, and all you need is 20 people, and it's only going to cost $10,000. And we're just like, can you please just help us build what we've got to do? It's like, we've got enough work,
Yeah.
And so we were always a no, and now there's a board, and they're like, we want to do this thing. And we're like, sure, go ahead.
Go for it. Well, and sometimes it seems simple, like you're only talking about a couple of $1,000s and 4 people, and I go, but those 4 people and those $4,000 we need to put on this thing. Like, we're not flush with money.
we were actually, that's the other thing. Last year was the first year we were in the black between camp dues and a couple of donations. We actually none of our leaders had to go out of pocket.
Yeah, I mean, I think
they did a lot, by the way, when they were
right. I think even like beyond like the physical structure stuff. I mean, the things that you were describing about educating more like the outside world on consent culture and spreading out to the regionals. I mean, I would personally love to see people donating to your nonprofit in order to expand that effort, because I think that's super valuable, and you obviously have a lot of street cred in helping with this part of the education. So I think that's the way that Burning Man helps the rest of the world, helps the default. But I really want to thank you so much. This is the part of the show where I thank you for all the stuff that you do, and really learning about all the work that gets into it, and really for me personally, like I said earlier, grasping the amount of emotional energy that goes into the responsibility that you've taken on. I think it's massive. It's really important. I know you said it's only like 1 or 2 people per day or whatever. Like for most of us, that's a really scary thing to have to go and confront somebody about that. But it's so important. What you're doing is important, and I can't express enough gratitude for what you bring to Burning Man and what you bring to society at large, and how you're helping all of us.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having this podcast and having us on there. We do take great pride in the gift that we provide, and I think there is a lot of mystique about it, and even some misunderstanding about what the Dome is. And I'm really happy when we have an opportunity to again kind of talk about what we do and why we do it, and so thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Yeah.
I do appreciate
Thanks
this
for having us.
opportunity. So.
I think this is going to be a big one. It's going to be popular. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, guys.
You bet.
You are now listening to the sounds of Seth Schwartz. This set was recorded at the Play Alchemist opening party of Burning Man 2018. Seth Schwartz is not hard to find. You can, I would probably start with a SoundCloud. That's where there's a ton of music for you to check out. SoundCloud.com/Seth Schwartz. Seth-Schwartz. That's spelled SETH-SCHWRZ. You can Google Seth Schwartz. You'll find him. Please give us a like on Facebook and join the Facebook group, and leave us a review on iTunes. The reviews do help the show grow and gain more support. All these links are over at burnerpodcast.com. You can find me on all the social medias at Mr. Arash. That's MRARASH. And if you're sending a friend request, please do shoot me a message so I know you're not a spam bot. And do let me know if you have any interesting interview subjects in your area. Maybe I'll come to your regional, eat all your ice cream sandwiches, and nap during your art build. Our producers are Lee Hemingway and Louis Galipeau, with additional support by Tori Massey and Navjit Sarna of Burner Podcast Presents Alkaline. We aim to have new shows up on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. My sincere apologies for being on burner time these days, but what can I do? 2 a month. I'll get you that. 2 a month. The show is available pretty much on all the major podcast platforms. It's not on the one you really want. Let us know. Our opening theme music, America's Horse with No Name Remix, is produced by Joe Man. You can find him at soundcloud.com/DJ Joe Man. So until next time, love and light and all that other crap, take us out. Seth Schwartz.
به سمت منحنت راهی نمیشوی چرا آهی
burningmanpodcast.com.